Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Walter Dial, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building transferable or sellable business value and then planning for your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that can be sold or transferred successfully, and then help you successfully exit on your own terms and conditions. Walter, it's not unusual to hear from clients when assessing the quality of their revenue and their products and services, to hear them say something like, my new product is not selling, and I'm worried because I've invested a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat and blood in this new product or service, and it's just not moving the way I was hoping it would. And that can also be, we've seen this of course with new businesses too, that they're just not seeing the level of sales that they had forecasted in their business plan. In the article written by our guest today that prompted our invitation to have our guest on the podcast, he mentioned these statistics. According to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, approximately 20% of small businesses, these statistics are not new to us, of course, and probably not to our listeners. 20% of small businesses will fail within the first year. By the end of the second year, 30% of businesses will have failed. The end of the fifth year, about half. The end of the decade, only 30% of businesses will remain, a 70% failure rate. And then LendingTree reports that the number one reason for this, for small businesses failing, is lack of demand for product or services. Almost half, 42% of startup businesses fail because people don't actually need or want what they're selling, according to research firm CB Insights. So Walter, what do we do in a case like that? Usually when where there's a client who has a situation and their sales and of products and services, it just aren't what they need it to be, want it to be. What do we usually do in a case like that?
Well, Pat, fortunately, we have a really good network full of other professionals who can answer questions and help clients when you and I are a little bit out of our comfort zone. So I think in a situation like that, we would refer them to the appropriate marketing guru or someone like that, I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's right. We're we're not exactly clueless when it comes to marketing, but we're certainly not gurus and we're certainly not marketing experts. So that's what we would do. But you know what? Today, we're going to have a trained aerospace engineer provide us with a solution.
That was going to be my second suggestion. Get an aerospace engineer.
Right. That's where we would go next, or probably first now. And so our topic today is, when you start making a big decision, first talk with the people involved. And our guest is Sam Klaidman of Middlesex Consulting. Sam has a BS in Aerospace and Aeronautical Engineering, has held positions as an experimental physicist.
Easy for you to say.
Saying that word. Missile test engineer, manufacturing engineering manager, master scheduler, VP of manufacturing, VP of customer service, and is currently the founder and principal advisor at Middlesex Consulting. And at Middlesex, Sam works with organizations that help equipment owners maintain their equipment and maximize their equipment uptime. He's consulted with Fortune 500 companies like GE, Pfizer, Corning, Honeywell, as well as many small and mid-sized businesses in a lot of different industries. And many of his clients are privately held and still controlled by members of the founding family. So Sam, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Hey, so Sam, first, for clarification's sake, your firm, Middlesex Consulting, indeed helps businesses maintain their equipment and maximize their equipment uptime.
Yeah, that's-
correct? You're not a marketing firm.
I'm not a marketing firm at all. I'm an operations person.
You're an operations person. And so would you agree that what we're going to be discussing this morning is most often considered a marketing question or challenge? And then if indeed that you think that's true, how did an engineer working with equipment get interested in this particular topic we're going to talk about today?
Good question. So first of all, like all good consultants, the answer is always it depends.
Uh-huh.
Right. So it depends. If you're thinking about how do I avoid the failure of my next product or the failure of my business venture, then yeah, that's probably marketing, although it really should form the basis of your strategy. And sometimes it's too important to give to marketing, and it should be maintained and owned by the person involved. So that's the first part. The second part is what I do is I work with the customer service groups of OEMs, the manufacturers of the equipment, and help them create products and services that their customers are going to want to buy. And the way that after messing around a little bit and not being one of the 20% that failed in the first year, I discovered that the way to do it is to talk to prospects and customers and find out what they really want, what they really need, where they're underserved, where they're overserved, and use that to guide my recommendations as to what services are viable for their base.
All right, good. Okay, thank you. That's a very clear answer to my question. Now, Sam, so I know that you had asked us if we could begin today with you actually asking Walter and I a question or two. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll,
Yeah, is that okay?
yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so it's either two questions or one question with two parts. So the first question is, in general, why do people buy the products or services that they buy? So let's discuss that one, and then we'll ask about why specifically the stuff you guys sell.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll offer up this. It meets a need, and there's an emotional piece to it. So they recognize they have a need that needs a product or a solution. They recognize your product or solution is fulfilling the need, and something has impacted them emotionally to take action. I don't know if I'll give a better answer than that. Walter, what about you? What would you say?
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. The only thing I would add to that would be it could be either a real need or it could be a perceived need based on marketing or other influences.
Good.
Or emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's better than I expected.
Oh, thanks a lot, Sam.
Well, I go into things. If you go into things with very low expectations, you're never disappointed, right? So
That hurts too, Sam. That hurts.
Right. So there are not my problem. So there's one piece of the answer that I think you missed, and that is that they have a need and it meets their cost objective or something that involves cost. Because otherwise, anything that meets your need, people are going to want to buy. It's like the kids in a candy store. But businesses have finite costs, and their role is to maximize the difference between the benefits they get and the costs they spend. And that difference in there is called the value. And that's really the objective. And the other thing is that it's typically the decision is made based on a comparison between you and other people out there that may offer the same or similar products at different price points, but the comparison is only based on what they know at a very specific time. And therefore, over time, they may learn more and they may reassess their decision. So it's that in reality, that decision is not a one-time decision. Because the customers, the people that are benefiting from the decision, are going to maybe change that calculation when they get new information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
And I guess also their needs could change over time. So for instance, we'll oftentimes pick up clients who started with a smaller CPA firm, and then as their business grew, they needed more expertise or specialties. So I guess the customer could find new information regarding maybe a different or better product, or their needs could change also.
Right, great point. And it's a great point. And so what we've just done is combine those two questions that I was going to ask. But I think the point is that people buy from us, you, me, everyone else, because they need and want what we're selling. They like the price we're charging, and we are the best alternative at the point of time. And that's why they buy, and that's why people buy from your clients and my clients.
That makes sense. I don't know why Pat didn't come up with that in his answer.
That's because he's not an aerospace engineer. What can I tell him?
No, I'm not.
But
Okay,
it
so
is,
did we answer your second question too then?
yeah, you really did, because my second question was going to be, why do they buy from you? And I know all you're going to say is because I meet all the criteria, and that makes sense. So I'm good.
Oh, you're good. Okay. All right. So what about this topic that we have here? The topic that we agreed on, which would be a good one today. When you start making a big decision, first talk with the people involved. And then Walter, I think you had a question that's directly related to the topic. You're on mute.
Sorry. I guess, yeah, who are we saying we should be talking to? Is it customers?
Okay. So let me answer.
Well, maybe, and Sam, even before that, maybe, what do you mean? What are some examples of important decisions?
Okay. So great. So important decision, I break down into two categories for a conversation like this. The first one is decisions that are above my pay grade, and probably most people that are going to be listening to this, but it makes a great example. So if we think back to around 2000, we all used to go into the Blockbuster store and rent a cassette. And over time, they grew to, I don't know, 10,000 stores in America. Well, in 2008, the CEO of Blockbuster was quoted as saying, Redbox and Netflix never crossed our horizon. So, that's a big decision that people made in the dark without talking with customers, without understanding what was happening in their marketplace based on facts they're gathering from the customers who are actually using their service, as opposed to a decision that was made based on their own intuition. Another similar example is in the same time frame, Kodak invented the digital camera, but they decided that everybody is going to really want film and nobody's going to want the digital anyway. And clearly their intuition and whatever their advisors were telling them was wrong, because they're not the ones who are making the purchasing decision. So to answer Walter's question, the people that you need to ask are the ones that who you want to influence. So let's assume that in the case of Blockbuster, yeah, you go out and talk to the people that renting your CD, your cassettes, and you say, yeah, are there any other things that you like about other services? And you ask them and you learn from them. But if we break it down, it doesn't only have to be about your business and the major forces shaping it. It could very well be something that is more real-time, more operational. So for example, today, many businesses are making the decision about when to bring employees back into the office, under what conditions, and how many days a week. And there are people that are making these decisions based on talks between their peers, as opposed to reaching out to their employees, who are the people that are really involved and whose opinion really matters more than their peers, because those employees, if the answers that they get or the guidance they're getting is inconsistent with what they're looking for, they're going to leave. And the decision makers are going to be surprised. Well, why are they going? Well, they're going because they didn't want to work in the office 5 days a week. And you never asked them, and you never were able to then take their feedback and integrate that into what you feel is the best for the company to come up with a solution that balances both you and them. And that's really the key, is to ask the people who are involved. People, my customers come to me and say, should I do this service or that service? And I said, doesn't matter what I think. I don't own your product. I'm never going to buy from you. You need to get that information from the people who you want to spend their money with you. And I think that's the simplest answer I can come up with. It's whose opinion do you need? And it depends on the decision that you're thinking about taking.
Yeah, I think those are really good examples. The other thing as you were speaking, one thing I was thinking, the timing of the question matters too, because let's say you were Blockbuster, and by the time Netflix, has built up a beginning customer base, you kind of say, oh boy, something's wrong. Let's ask our customers. You could be too late. So do you recommend that businesses are always asking their customers questions like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I'll give an example. The other night, I brought in dinner from a major national restaurant chain. And I've been doing this every 3-4 weeks for 17 months. And in that time, including the other night, I guess I'd received probably 6 or 8 email survey invitations. And that frequency was fine. If you over survey, over ask people, they really get disgusted and just tune you out. And if you never ask, you never learn anything. But so I think you have to establish a cadence of asking your customers. And it doesn't always have to be a survey. People at all levels should be interacting with their customers, either face-to-face in the old days or now on Zoom, but they should still be interacting. And somewhere in there, they should be asking questions other than about what's going on or what has happened in the last 6 months. They ought to be asking in general, is there anything you'd like to, any service you'd like us to provide? Is there any product you'd like us to provide? Is there any changes you'd like us to implement in our day-to-day operation? And the people that are really methodical about it divide their customer base into 12 groups. And every month they talk with a 12th of their customer base on a rotational basis. And somewhere into those discussions, you ask some of these more strategic questions. Yeah. Same thing with your employees. Yeah. How many times have you seen a manager that you know well walk down among his employees and, how you doing? How's everything going? Great. That doesn't count. That's a gratification question. You expect them to say everything's great and I love it. But right. But you really need to every now and then say, are we communicating enough? Do you understand where we're going? Do you understand what we're trying to do? Do we tell you enough about the successes and failures of the company? Those kinds of questions should be asked to the employees pretty consistently, but not with the same people all the time, and do it with an open mind.
Yeah. So is there anything else you'd say about any recommendations, best practices that you've seen as to anything else you'd say about how to ask the questions? Talk some about that already, and you've talked about when and that kind of thing. Is there anything else you'd say about how?
Yeah, I think there are 2 things, which means it'll probably be 3, but the first thing is you have to ask open-ended questions. The yes/no question doesn't really do you any good. It forces people into your mode instead of an open-ended question. Is there anything else? Is there anything you'd like us to implement to make your job better? That requires a thoughtful answer. That's the kind of answer that you get really useful information from. But if you just ask, say, do you need anything from us to make your job better? No, it's just go away and leave me alone. And it's the open-ended questions is one. The other thing is, don't get defensive. If they answer it honestly and you don't really want to hear it, don't get defensive. It's just the wrong attitude, and it'll turn off your employees. It'll turn off your customers if you're doing it with them. If the customer says, gee, you run a dry cleaning shop, I'd love you to be open until 8 o'clock at night, not 7. And that's good feedback. And you say, well, I really can't because I have to go home and bathe the baby or whatever it is. And that's not, those guys are never going to answer your questions again, honestly. So
Sam, in that example, I mean, are you opening a dialogue, or let's say you get that response, it'd be better if you were open an extra hour. Is that the end of it then? You've got what you want. There's really no reason to respond, right? Or do you need to respond so they somehow know that you've acknowledged it?
Yeah, I know. Good question. The Japanese have an approach to getting information, and it's called the 5 whys. So they ask a question, you give an answer, and they say, well, why? In some form. And then you give another answer. And they do that typically up to 5 times. And and they stop when they've got to the heart of the matter. And sometimes, you ask, well, why do you want me to be open till 8? Well, sometimes I work late. And if you ask enough, they'll come back and say, well, because I really like doing business with you, but when I work late and I can't get my shirts for the next week, it's really awkward. And the guy across the street is open till 8. So I'm going to have to change my business. That's what you really want to know. It's not necessarily the what. That's a good start, but it's the why, because you can't react and adapt to what's, but you can to the why.
Yeah. Okay. So Sam, this is great. As we start to wrap up, how can we, our audience is our small business, let's say up to 50 million in revenue.
Right.
And you're used to working with mostly large Fortune 500 companies and doing the work that you do. You do though have experience with small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses. What would you say is there anything that you would say to our audience who is more the small business owners that might be more distinct in regard to application of these principles that we've been discussing today?
Sure. So in all cases, big and small companies, I don't expect the owners as top managers to do this kind of stuff. In small businesses, I don't necessarily expect to go out and hire a consultant to do it, but they should, the people that are running it may be a wife's business and the husband is the CFO. And those two people ought to be talking about what information they'd really like to gather and encourage their customer-facing employees to ask that question and teach them a little bit about how to ask a question and not get defensive, to ask a question without leading and directing them to the answer, and just have them collect that data and make notes. Just make notes. I mean, if you had a hint that you needed to keep your shop open until 8 or later than you are, you might say to the people on the counter, then for the next week, I'd like you to ask people, is our closing time good or would you like it to be different? And make up a chart, a little chart with a piece of paper, 6 p.m., 7, 8, 9, and just have them put a tick in each box that the customers mentioned. And at the end of the week, you count it up and you get a pretty good indication of what your customers are really thinking.
That's very good. So, you're probably familiar with a book written years ago by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan, Execution. And in that book, they talk about the importance of exposing reality and being systematic about it. And so basically what you just outlined there was a best practice and encouragement toward equipping and then encouraging your customer-facing team members to regularly expose reality, if you will, about what customers are thinking and what they want. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. And the only advice I say is when you're going to do it, don't make them feel that if they bring bad news, they're going to be in a penalty box.
Yeah, don't shoot the messenger, right?
Absolutely. We've all seen that. And we all, but you got to be careful. But yeah, and I mean, some people at any size business, you can give out once a month the best piece of advice that I collected this month. And one of your employees gets, I don't know, dinner or something that's memorable, not expensive, and not crazy, but just to encourage them to keep collecting the information and feeding it back with no fear of being beat up.
Yeah, that doesn't, if you're going to be shooting the messenger, well, you're not going to be exposing reality. You got to encourage it and not shoot the messenger.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Okay, so in summary then, as we close up here, then the big idea here then, Sam, is we want to ask the people we want to influence, be they employees, be they customers, regarding
Also-
any kind of big decisions about products and services.
Right. Or it could be your suppliers. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but that's the answer. Yeah. Ask the people who are involved and who will be receiving whatever you are doing, if that's what they want.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Hey, Sam, thanks so much for joining us. This has been really great. Pat and I enjoyed it, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. Is there anything you'd like to promote today? And can you tell us how listeners can contact you?
Yeah, well, the easiest way to contact me, if you're on LinkedIn, I'm there, or my website is middlesexconsulting.com, and reach out. And I love to talk, as you probably observed, and I enjoy it, and I don't pull punches, and helping people is what makes me happy. So feel free to call and reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It was fun.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
And listeners, if you want help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, you can reach Pat at 301-859-0860, and you can reach me at 301-951-9090. You can also access resources at exitreadiness.com, grfcpa.com, and nslp.com. As always, thanks for listening. And until next time on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Walter Dial and Pat Ennis signing off.